All right, so I'm now recording. Good morning, everybody. It's a beautiful day in Long Island today, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to the kickoff of our Take Flight with LincolnIT webinar series. I want to just, my name is Anne-Marie Santamarina, for those of you that don't know me, and I'm really excited to be joined by our partner Datto today to talk to you about why it's really important to have a backup for your cloud-based applications. So we can go to the next slide. I want to give you a little bit of information, a little bit of background about LincolnIT. If you are not familiar with LincolnIT, we are a Long Island-based MSP that was founded in 1998. We have over 125 employees distributed across 4 actual brick and mortar locations, but we have, our staff is growing exponentially, and we are growing across the nation. So as we continue to build out our team, we are hiring people in many of the states across the US. Just a little bit of an overview of the services that LincolnIT provides, because Datto is our feature today, but I just wanted to take a couple of minutes and make sure that everybody was familiar with LincolnIT and the services that we provide. So how we categorize our services at Lincoln is we organize them into 5 distinct brands: our IT Care brand, Cloud Care, Secure Care, Data Care, and Pro Care. And they kind of, I don't want to say they're obvious, but our IT Care are our managed service offerings, from help desk to NOC, patching, network management, backup and disaster recovery. We throw into our Data Care offering. Secure Care is baseline security, and then cybersecurity, and Pro Care professional services. And rounding it up, and what we're here to talk about today, fits into our Cloud Care brand. So what you'll be seeing throughout this series are, going to be, partners that work with Lincoln that, we go to market with, and we utilize their products to support our clients' cloud infrastructure, whether it be public cloud, or if you're on our private cloud. We have a private cloud at Lincoln, our own data center. So if you don't know about that, and you want to learn more, we can definitely share more with you about that as well. So next slide, Tom. So hold on, okay. So as I mentioned earlier, the partner that we have here with us today is Datto. I'm very excited to announce that if you do follow us on social media, you would have seen recently that Lincoln was awarded the Blue Diamond status with Datto in our partnership level. That is the highest, the highest distinction that we can get in our Datto partnership. So we're really excited and proud. This partnership is probably going on a decade in the making. And, for some of you that are our customers here, you're probably using Datto products, the hardware-based products like an Alto or a Cirrus we've been working with for many years. And several years ago, we decided to really integrate Datto SaaS as one of our go-to-market cloud backup platforms. And Dominic will share with you today why that was such a strong decision for us and why it made a lot of sense for our client base. So Dom, welcome. We spent a couple of minutes talking about how to pronounce Dom's last name. And so he's Dom Strack. Shack is Shack. Well, today, ladies and gentlemen, we have for you Strack. So Dom, welcome. Really excited to have you with us. And I'm going to hand over to you.
Thank you so much, Anne-Marie, and thank you all of LincolnIT that's on the call with us too. Can't say enough, before I move past the slide, just like Anne-Marie was saying about, the partnership here. LincolnIT is a Blue Diamond partner, and just, again, to affirm what she was saying, that is the highest status that you can receive with us. So this is a really, thriving partnership, and one that we like, representing from our side as well. So we're always happy to be on calls like this. We're always happy to come as an educator, which is the lens that we want to be seen in here today. So happy to be, part of this conversation and kind of, talking through some of the cloud backup pieces with us as part of the discussion. Moving us a little bit into that topic, our general theme of what we're going to look at today is, is your data protected? And more importantly, this really is a learning session of understanding what cloud backup is and where the need is for it, right? We've been using solutions like Microsoft Office 365, now M365, and Google Workspace, formerly G Suite. These are two products that really have become, integral parts of the business. And we just want to make sure that everyone understands the backup component that come with them. Real quick introduction of myself. Again, I do work for Datto. I specialize in our cloud backup product. So I'm one of our product specialists. I'm a senior product specialist over there. I work on the cloud backup product line. The reason that I highlight that is because I'm not joining the call as any type of sales resource. This isn't necessarily to be seen in that type of lens. And what we really want this to, land in terms of the point here is an educational opportunity for everyone to be able to learn about cloud backup today and then carry forward that conversation with LincolnIT later. So in here, we'll talk about, high level stuff. We'll talk about the different ways that, cloud backup becomes valuable for a business. And then you can work with LincolnIT to really get under the hood of your own environment and understand maybe how it's more pertinent to your situation, or maybe the market that you work in, demands it a little bit, more than even, another. So we'll talk all about that, but that's the general goal of today's discussion. So starting off, like I said, we've got to go back a little bit in the story to the fact that, really over the last, I'd say half a decade, it's a little bit longer now, but we really have made this push to the cloud, meaning you go back a little bit beyond 5 years and you really run more into a lot more on-premise hardware, right? Accomplishing this, whether it was an email server, whether it was an email server and file server component, but this was all accomplished through on-prem infrastructure. And what Microsoft and Google have done is they've given us opportunity to, offload that, take that burden off our shoulders, move things to the cloud for more flexibility on where we can access that data, but also just, peace of mind that we don't now need to manage it or, manage the infrastructure around it. We don't need those servers in our building anymore. We don't need trucks rolling out to work on them or fix them. If we can do it from the cloud, it makes sense to do it. And that's really where you saw this whole adoption or this standardization of the cloud really, drive from. The next piece that I generally like to talk to the audience about is just some of ways that data gets lost in these environments, right? And I say that because the next idea is that while we do put our data up into the cloud and we do use these SaaS applications, the fact of the matter is that we're still losing data out of them. That's not anything negatively said towards Microsoft or Google. You'll hear me kind of bring it up a couple times during this, but we are Microsoft partners. We work with them. Our solutions are tied together. We don't see us as a competitive displacement of Microsoft. So this isn't us saying, hey, these products have shortcomings and that's why they lose data. But in actuality, they lose data because people just don't have as strong of an education on what's covered and what's not. What do the native features protect you from, and what do they don't? And what these statistics are really here to show you is that while we go through this and we look at data loss, it's not necessarily something that is a big fear play around ransomware, hackers, things like that. We see from this primary statistic that 1 in 3 businesses do report that they lose data from cloud applications. But like I said, like immediately, even myself when I was in this market, thought, oh, that meant hackers and viruses. And 13% isn't a low number. We're going to talk about it more in terms of its impact in a second. But what I do like to kind of highlight here real quick is just how much less that number is than the 47% that comes from end client deletions here. I know we skirted past this number real quick, but when you take this 7% and you put it together with this 47%, this is over 50% of your data loss events happen right from within your own business. And again, that's not taking anything away from the ransomware statistic. The ransomware statistic's really important because, again, we're going to talk about it, but ransomware is the most, malicious of these types of intrusions. So when that does happen, it's a little bit more targeted. It's a little bit more destructive. And like I said, there's some place to talk about ransomware in a little bit. But on the end client side, this really does highlight the idea of, maybe there are some things that we don't know about our environment. This is where common mistakes happen, where, misunderstanding what maybe version history or data loss protection does and not understanding where a core backup might be valuable. This is somewhere where, you might shut a user off in terms of the retention policy of data and not realize when Microsoft expires that data. There's different ways that just mistakes can be made in the system. And that's where you really see a driving, force behind this number is just not understanding what we have in our current solution and what we're maybe missing from the outside. I put this COVID-19 slide into the deck, not to, drag anyone back into the pandemic or talking about COVID-19, but it's actually a really good opportunity to talk about this market for a couple reasons. I like to say that there's, in a lot of these technology markets, there's landscape shifters. And I'm not just trying to hit like a cliche phrase, but what I more mean by that is that when I say landscape shifting, I say, it was there to serve a primary purpose, but a certain event or certain, change really re-highlighted its value or created secondary value. And I really think that's what happened over the last year or so was Microsoft Office 365 had been a big widely adopted product to begin with. You already saw the statistics earlier in the presentation. But what happened was that people that converted over to Microsoft, say 3-4 years ago, they were doing it much more with like email in front of mind, right? I have an email server, I want to put it in the cloud. And while there were things like Teams and SharePoint and different components of Microsoft, businesses didn't widely adopt them on the first push, if that makes sense. But the second push, the COVID-19 push, absolutely pushed people more to these collaboration channels. SharePoint Teams had massive explosions over the last year. Businesses that were never using them before now use them as primary collaboration channels. Businesses that were never using before them might have just dipped their toes into them. But what I'm more saying is whether you're on one side and you're widely adopting it or you're just, putting limited data in there, the fact of the matter remains you're putting more data into Office 365 and Google, in different terms, for that matter, than you ever have before. And this really, reinforces the idea that just because you made a decision on something 3 or 4 years ago, maybe it was with LincolnIT, you had a conversation, you said cloud backup wasn't for you. It doesn't mean that your practices in your business haven't evolved you past a place where you want to reconsider that conversation. And again, not in any salesy way, but in a way of, hey, maybe now that the business has more sensitive data or more sensitive data in areas that aren't as easily, understood, maybe you understand Microsoft Exchange really well, but you have just slowly adopted Teams and you don't know what areas have recovery options. So these are all things that you can work with, LincolnIT on. These are things that we work with LincolnIT on ourselves, just so that everybody has this knowledge to support you. So I'm just saying, if you find yourself in this use case, if you do think, yeah, geez, we really did grow on our Microsoft Teams this last year, make sure you bring that conversation back to this team here, and everyone can help you kind of, understand if now might be the right time for you to look at cloud backup. So we talked about ransomware a little bit, and I promised that we would come back to it, because again, you never want to dismiss ransomware on a call like this, right? And I don't want that to be the case at all. When we look at a percentage, we want to make sure that we're putting those percentages into the right understandings for people, and understanding what more commonly is going to happen in your environment than not. Because one analogy that I'll always make with ransomware that I use in these situations is, for the last 3 or 4 years, I've been in the cloud backup market, been at Datto for much longer. And one of the most common objections that I always hear to getting cloud backup initially is, but I haven't had ransomware yet. And I think that's a good point, right? Like, I do think that we just put the 13% up. I'm sure that there's enough people in this audience that could say, like, my business hasn't had ransomware yet. But what I'm trying to highlight here is that the analogy to the conversation that I see, and again, it was made for me by Microsoft, is this very much is like protecting your identity, right? What I mean by that is that we all do a lot of things in our daily practices to protect our identity. We have secure passwords, we have two-factor authentication, we do lots of things to make sure that the bad worst case scenario doesn't occur for us. We want to make sure that, if it does, that we're the most prepared to handle it. So it's the same reason why a lot of us do things like that to protect our identities, maybe even pay for services where, identity, theft is, highlighted quicker for us or easily recovered if, like identity insurance and stuff like that. What I'm getting at is it's very similar to this conversation. You don't want to be sitting there saying, I haven't gotten ransomware, which is why I don't protect myself. But at the same time, you want to understand that, ransomware is something that when it happens is going to be working around a lot of these different areas in the system. You say things like, oh, I might have version history or I might have data loss protection. And I'm not here to dismiss the value of any of those features, right? Like I said, we work with Microsoft on a regular basis. We think that those features are inherent to a product like theirs to be a reputable, cloud business management solution. That being said, the ransomware people know about them too. There's no ransomware artist, I put air quotes around it, in the world that's going to go out there and, just delete your files so that you can just simply recover them back from a recycling bin, or infect your files so that you could just move them all back a version. These people are doing things in much more targeted ways. And when they do, they absolutely are looking for things around those areas. So that's where sometimes, even if you haven't had ransomware and you say, I don't need cloud backup, when you do have it, you think, oh, but I thought I had all these features inside Microsoft. And kind of back to the fact of the matter is they know those features exist. I'm sure they're going to do their absolute best to take those offline for you or work around them. So again, when we do talk about ransomware, smaller percentage, but always think of it as your worst case scenario. This is the most malicious type of attack. These are the ones that take time to recover from, and definitely why, you know, there's a little extra value to having a cloud backup solution sitting behind the scenes for you in case you ever find yourself in this scenario. So one thing that I want to kind of, you know, make sure we highlight here is this shared responsibility model. One, because I say this on every presentation I do. If there was one slide that everyone woke up for, took a screenshot, you know, turned their attention on for, it's this one. This really is the why. You go through and you hear a vendor like myself talking about different ways you can lose data. And to some degree, I don't, you know, mean it in any offensive way to myself, but I'm sure there's a collective eye roll from the audience, you know, another guy telling us about the bad stuff that can happen. But I really think that this is much more important. Even when I learned this product line, when I learned this market, this really is the glue that kind of pulled it all together for me. The idea that, yeah, Microsoft and Google do things, right? They do replicate our data. They do, you know, do a lot on the hardware side and the software side to mitigate failures for us, which, you know, very much shows up in terms of uptime and our accessibility to these products. They do things like take natural disaster, power outage, things like that that used to occur on these on-premise infrastructures off our shoulders. We don't need to worry about these things anymore. They've got those. But what happens is there's a lot of really good stuff that Microsoft does. So then we just start throwing everything in there, right? We just start saying the other stuff too. And they do. We talked about some of those features: recycling bin, version history, data loss protection, archive folders. Like, these are all really, really good areas of the product. I will steal a quote directly from Microsoft because I was that guy when we started, right? Like when I was at Datto and we made this introduction to Microsoft, we created our partnership. I was the rep on the call, just reading off different features inside Microsoft, thinking I could trip them up and say, but that's the one you guys call backup. And it's funny because the reason I tell this story is about halfway through my list of me doing data loss protection, archive folder, you know, all the other ones out there. The rep kind of stopped me. He's like, hey, listen, like, I don't mean it in any rude way, but it sounds like you kind of got a list going over there. If anything else on your list doesn't say backup in its title, its intended purpose was not for backup. And it was funny. We all got to laugh because it's like, hey, you know, let's not go through the neurotic list. But more importantly, like, it really highlights that these features, we're not taking anything away from them when we say you still need backup. And Microsoft doesn't feel like we're taking anything away from them by being in the market, because there's a need for both. Those features keep you from needing to do things like full restores, but maybe one day you do need to do a full restore. The other analogy that I like to give people on the phone here, again, for myself, like I always see things better through them, is I think of this as my phone, right? And that's a funny analogy to kind of, you know, lock into, but think of your photo history, right? On your phones and how that's evolved, right? If I delete a couple pictures on my phone, I sure as heck don't want to do a backup and recovery of all of it. I don't want to restart my phone and upload, you know, 2 weeks worth of, you know, restores into it, no matter how fast it is, because it's just a pain. I have to go change stuff, tweak stuff. It's just not good. I want to be able to simply go into the recycling bin and just grab those 3 or 4 photos and kick them back onto my phone. So I don't need to do a recovery. That's the same thing that these Microsoft features are built for. They are very much there to help you not need a backup, but they are not there to displace backup or replace the need for backup. So maybe you can do something with version history. Maybe it's just a fat finger deletion of a file and you can just simply go back into the recycling bin and recover it. We want that to be the case. That means life's easier for any, you know, user at that point. But there will be times where that's not the case. There will be times where you delete 400 photos off your phone and you don't want to simply click recover, click recover for all those photos. You want to go back and restore them all, do it in one shot. And again, that analogy that I'm trying to create here is really where a lot of times people ask me, but I have version history, and it's for 1 or 2 files, that's going to be okay. And honestly, like, I wouldn't tell you to recover through a situation if you could use version history, but there's enough use cases out there, we've been talking about them, where that's not going to be the case, or you definitely don't want to be one clicking all the way down a list of maybe thousands of emails or hundreds of files just to kind of get your data back. So again, this isn't supposed to take anything away from the Microsoft platform. If anything, it re-highlights that there is a shared responsibility here. And that really is where we're kind of, you know, picking up our side of the conversation. The next couple slides that I want to take us through are more examples within the Microsoft service level agreements where this is reinforced, right? It's one thing to have a data resource up here talking about Microsoft. It's another to put Microsoft language on the screen and really talk through it. I do this again, not as a T's and C's read. This isn't me like legally going through their files and saying, look what they say. Again, this is stuff they brought us, right? We say that we have these calls, we have these conversations. Where could you point us to better help our audiences understand this? And these are kind of their suggestion. And I think this one's really good because on the top half of the screen, I'm going to blow by it a little bit. This is just standard cloud language, meaning we strive to keep our services up and running. There might be disruptions of data. They clarify that all in their, 4 nines area, and they do a good job of describing exactly what their outage expectation is. So we're going to ignore that, right? That's standard cloud language. It's the bottom half of this slide that I think is much more important to stick on. Talks about regularly backing your cloud data up on third-party apps and services. This is another place where I personally, because I did it, but I see a lot of people read by it as third-party app and service. That phrasing, for some reason, doesn't necessarily connect the same way that it did on the on-premise side. Meaning, when I saw that, I hear, well, we don't have one. Third party. We don't have a first-party option. We think you need it, but we don't have one yet ourselves. And the key word there is yet. Does that mean Microsoft is building one? Does that mean Microsoft feels you don't need one? Why would they reference third party here? Well, again, the good news is we got to ask them directly. And what third party really means, and this is where it really becomes important for everyone, is independent. And independent is something that's not new to our world, right? Even when we did backup on premise, independency was huge. Anne Marie was talking about those Datto devices early on. Those are exactly what independent backup is. Like there was a server running there. Maybe it was a hypervisor server, a file server, whatever the case might be. But when you got that information or that data loaded onto that server, you didn't step back from it and say, okay, time to make it all safe. Duplicate the C drive to the D drive and back this thing up. And it's a bad joke, and I'm being sarcastic, but we all know that that wasn't what we were doing because duplicating the data in the same environment didn't do us a whole lot of good. Microsoft is making the same point here for you. Why is Microsoft going to create Microsoft Cloud Backup so that at some point you could have an outage or some type of issue at Microsoft where now you've just doubled down and had this data in the same spot? This is that big missing, like, aha, like, why don't they have one? It's not because they don't think you need one, but it's because their job is to build all the other services, the other primary, points for you to be able to rectify from, the places where you can make those easy, changes without needing backup. But if you truly are in a situation now where you need backup, one of the ones where I was talking about, where maybe it's 400 files and not two, you're not going to want to be working in the same environment where one, maybe you have ransomware, or two, maybe you're having some type of difficulty. And even further to the point, when you call Microsoft and have an issue like this, because I've been on the phone with them enough at this point, one of the very first questions, if not the first that they will ask you, is what third-party backup service do you use alongside this environment? Meaning they're also looking for, the idea that maybe you have this data independently and it's going to be much easier to recover from there rather than do some type of data mining exercise with their team. So again, just another great place where it kind of highlights that shared responsibility, and it really makes sense of some of the things that sometimes I think we look at and we're like, well, if they're not doing it, then it must not be important. And it's stuff like this that really needs to be explained in terms of, well, there is an importance, but there's a line sort of drawn in the middle of where they, are spending their time and where you should be spending yours. Moving on to our second use case, want to talk a little bit about retaining data after it's, removed, if that makes sense in terms of my phrasing. And what I more mean is how long after you shut a user off does that data stay on the back end of your environment? And long story short, the answer is 90 days. It's not 90 days from one specific place, but 30 days in the user recycling bin, 60 days in the admin recycling bin, another brief period on Microsoft's back end, but it's 90 days, right? When you compile all of that up, the last date and time that they're going to have a copy of your data is that 90th day. Meaning if John Smith leaves the business, anywhere within those first 90 days, if you need to rectify any type of data, missing or data that needs to be passed along to someone else, you can do it right within Microsoft. And to be completely honest, most mistakes you're going to make when shutting users off are going to be realized in the first 3 months. So again, kind of a nod to the Microsoft functionality here. 90 days is a long time to figure out when you make your mistakes. And to give you 90-day mistake, wiggle room is really key, because ultimately that's going to help, again, keep you from needing that restore. But let's go through this in a different lens, right? We're talking about shared responsibility, and now you have the backup guy saying that, 90 days is good enough here. but this is where we really want to kind of highlight some of this education. 90 days is just one scenario here. 90 days is John Smith leaves the business and 90 days go by and maybe you made a mistake, maybe you didn't. What I want to highlight is maybe the mistake that comes thereafter. John Smith leaves the business, 90 days go by, everybody's feeling good. Microsoft says, all right, we're going to delete this data now. And they go ahead and do that. What happens at this point is you don't have that data anymore, right? And maybe there was no mistake made, but you're not keeping it for any type of compliance or regulatory need that you might have. So the mistake might not necessarily be in the first 90 days. It might be that audit that comes in a year, year and 4 months type thing where someone's asking you to produce information where you've been trickling it out of your system for 90 days. What these cloud backup solutions do, specifically SaaS protection, is they give you that tail. With our solution, we have an infinite cloud retention that can be dialed to a certain setting or set at infinite. Meaning if you're a HIPAA customer, you can put a 7-year retention of this data on. So yes, maybe Microsoft is helping you with the mistake window again, but what are you doing to help understand and be compliant with the market that you know about? It's not their responsibility to understand, oh, I'm working with a HIPAA environment, or I'm working with a federally, regulated government environment or anything like that. Those are things that we, the end user, or we, the end user plus service provider, need to really think about and layer into our environments. In a vacuum, Microsoft thinks 90 days is good for mistakes. And you just heard us. We said the same thing. But we don't think Microsoft is good enough to meet, certain compliances out there or meet certain data practices that maybe you already have installed in the business. Maybe you're not in a regulated market, but your goal as a business is always to keep your data for 1 year for legal protection. That might be the case. It might not. But these are the types of things that you want to incorporate into a conversation with LincolnIT so that they can make sure that they're giving you the right read. Oh, you want your data, on recovery option for a year. They can get under the hood and see, well, you're not using a solution like this. You only have 90 days. So again, this really points me back to the consultative opportunity here to kind of sit down, review this stuff with, an expert. But I do think that it's always a good thing to kind of do a reset point and just say, like, are we using this environment in the most safe and secure way? So moving us along here, and kind of just keeping track of the time too, so that we have Q&A and different pieces here. I just want to stick on this slide for a second. One, because it looks like the Goldilocks slide. It talks about what you can do, what you can't do, and it kind of follows that, do nothing, do something, do everything. But I do really want to highlight the do nothing part, right? Because I want to at least kind of give everybody a little, subtle pat on the back today for making sure that they move themselves out of the do nothing phase. Meaning just showing up to a call like this is taking action. Understanding, learning these environments, figuring out what they are, what they aren't is a big piece of this. And you're looking at a statistic right in front of you that says 40% of businesses right now aren't even taking that step. This is a brand new market. Cloud backup isn't easy to understand because the cloud is still a pretty brand new concept to us as it is. And ultimately, putting yourself into environments like this to become better educated is really the first step in all of it. Now, I leave you kind of with LincolnIT to determine, are you a 2 or are you a 3? Does limited recovery options somehow work in your guys' business case scenario? Or is it really time to regain some of that control back, making sure that you have third-party protection from behind the scenes? 2 and 3, that comes down to you guys and LincolnIT. Obviously, being Datto, we really, stress the value of this solution. But again, the point is that you walk away more educated and can continue that conversation on your own without us. I do want to take a brief second to highlight Datto Sas Protection. I haven't gone through and done anything, demo related or product related, but that's intentional. This should be educational on our market, and there's always time to talk about this. LincolnIT has us, available for demonstrations, for, more in-depth conversations on this, so we can always go deeper on our product. But at a super high level, SaaS Protection does give you that reliability and that flexibility to recover this cloud data. What we do is we take a 3 daily automated backup. We have an infinite cloud retention setting so that you don't need to worry about when that data is going to be deleted. We're one-click restores, and that's a big part of this, right? A lot of people talk about one-click restore, but what I want to highlight with us is when we say restore, we don't mean recovery, as in you download the file, then you re-upload the file, you're rebuilding the environment. We're saying one click on the restore button pushes this information from our solution back into your user's account. That's really key. It's an API built recovery system. So there is no like destructive and recovery or destructive recovery needed. And again, that just saves everybody a lot of time. And even if you're not super technical in nature, what it really means is we can get something back to you really quickly if we need to. The other three things I'll kind of bunch into one: point in time restore, non-destructive restore, and advanced search. These are features of our product that really allow us to get granular in terms of finding the right times and the right information for you. We can recover in full environments or particular pieces of data. Maybe it's just one or two emails that seem to be missing that, 6 months old, you just can't find them in the inbox. Something's wrong. They might be deleted. They might not. Don't worry about it. We can go back to a solution like this. Simply search for that sender, date and time, push those emails right back into the environment for you, no problem. So again, there's a lot of flexibility in the solution, a lot of scalability, and a lot of granularity. And we do feel pretty proud about the solution. But that's enough with SaaS protection. That's something that you can talk with LincolnIT a little bit more about in the future. And like I said, it's always something you can pull us back into as well. It leaves me on my tagline, right? And it looks cliche, or it looks like another, hot like phrase here, but it really boils down to companies need automated, simple, secure cloud backup. And I say that because I don't know if I entered this market with the same notion, right? And my job now as an educator in it is to leave everyone with it. And it's because these environments are big and they do a lot, right? Microsoft and Google are really, really good companies. They have really good products. We use them internally. I'm sure, again, knowing everybody on this call is here for that reason. You guys use them internally. They're really becoming more and more the lifeblood of business. But it doesn't mean that they do everything, right? And that's really what I want to leave people with is, just because you haven't had ransomware, just because you haven't had that big infection, doesn't mean you need to put yourself through it. I've seen so many people do that before. I've seen partners work with end clients, and then I've seen those same end clients back in our inbox with the partner with 10,000 file infections. It's just not worth it. In terms of the gamble, this is an easy product. It's lightweight, both in product and in cost. I highly recommend that you guys take a further look at it if you're using these solutions in any kind of, standard way within your business today. So want to turn things back over to the group. Anne-Marie, I'm going to bring the question slide up here. But before we do that, just want to say thank you to everybody for having me on this call. Like I said, I'm going to stay part of the question segment too, but can't stress enough how much, we appreciate people taking time out of their business day to listen to conversations like this. It literally is time that we see equated to money for you guys, and we take that seriously. And LincolnIT, thanks for having us on the call as part of this partnership that we really appreciate and really, enjoy working with you on.
Thank you, Dom. Really appreciate it. So I just want to pause here for a moment and see if anybody has any questions. If you don't want to come off mute and you want to put them in the chat, that's fine as well. But we hope that we were able to bring you something new today, or maybe reinforce a notion that you've already kind of had in your own toolkit, but just, dove a little deeper, or, just gave you one takeaway that you found valuable. Our aim with these webinars, we'd love to see you in person. That's really what we're aiming for. Hopefully later this year, we'll be able to accomplish that. But, while we are still remote, we thought that, we would do our best to, with our partners in the market, bring you educational content that's valuable to your business. So some of it technical, some of it business, just, doing our best to make sure that you've got the best tools in place to secure your data, to, prioritize your data, and just make sure that, if you've got compliance needs that you are, that you are accountable to, whatever it is that's the business driver, or, the topic that, drew you in. I'm spearheading a lot of this content, and I know many of you that are here today. If there's something you want to see that we're not doing, please reach out to me. Please visit our website if you haven't been there recently, www.lincolnit.com. We do have some really good blog content that we've been developing, and we are actually have something coming out, I think, next week that will speak specifically to the value of backing up your cloud data. So I don't see anything in the chat. I'll just pause another moment in case anybody does have a question.
And with that said, Anne-Marie, while we wait for people to kind of maybe funnel in some questions, if there are some, I'll just kind of throw out some quick highlights again, just in this Q&A session that we've seen come up in other ones. Just in general, it's worth kind of highlighting what areas of Microsoft does our product cover. We talked a little bit about it during the conversation, but Exchange, OneDrive, SharePoint, and Teams are going to be the primary pieces of this product line. So if you guys are, adopting any of those other products in the future, it's a great opportunity to look at it. If you're already using those areas, it's the right time to look at it, right? You might be in a situation where you want to look at that data and see how sensitive some of it is and make sure that you have it protected. But one way or the other, it's a good time to kind of get under the hood of your Office 365 and just see what you're using. Um, the other thing that, I want to stress, and it's just one piece that does sometimes come up, is data size and data storage. We don't talk about it too much on the actual presentation side of things, but Datto Sas Protection is the infinite cloud retention product, but we also have unlimited storage. Meaning when you're looking at these environments, and I'm sure you get this impression if you kind of went through a quote process with LincolnIT, is there is no emphasis on your storage. We want to make it really easy for you. We don't want you to have, two things to necessarily worry about. So all that you need to worry about is the license cost on this. One license gets you access to everything. Infinite cloud retention, unlimited data. You don't need to worry about anything else. So it's nice to have a tool that really is built, like, again, like we talk about the simplicity, but also we're doing our best to keep it simple, from an overall cost standpoint too. We understand there's a lot that businesses kind of put together at this point. We want to always make sure that we're building solutions that scale with them. Being able to give unlimited data is just another extra value point to us, in terms of what we see in our product line.
Great. Thank you for that, Dom. So I'll just close with this. You're seeing this map here in our question slide. I mentioned earlier that we have people, we're expanding our base all over the US. So you'll start to see this map light up as we hire people in other states throughout the US. We are based in Hicksville, Long Island, with an office in New York City and an office out in East Hampton, but we are growing and we are your nationwide help desk. So for all of our local folks who joined us today, thank you. Enjoy the beautiful day. And for those of you that are not in this geography, hope you have a great day as well. Our next session in this series will be next Tuesday, May 11th at 11 a.m. And we're going to have Datto back with our partner CyberSafe, and we're going to have a panel discussion. So if you haven't signed up for that as well, I think we're calling it Defense in Depth, and we're really going to dive into some of the additional core features and attributes around cloud security. So super excited to see you there, and thanks everybody again for your time. It's our pleasure to have you.